Well, Catherine, the time has come. It's about time we introduced our guest. What do you say?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. Well, joining us on the show, he's an award-winning comedian and actor. His credits include The Mummy, Spy Game, Gladiator, and Mamma Mia 2. Here we go again. It's the one and only Omid Djalili. Hello, sir. How are you?
Thank you, Scott, Catherine. What a pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to talk spy movies, and I've just literally just finished wrapped this week on a four-part ITV series called Betrayal, which is about real life spies and kind of literally taking down all the myths around what it's really like to be a spy, and the whole point of spy movies in general, I believe, is to tell people at home there's a secret dark army there that are there to protect you. You don't need to know who they are. You don't need to know how they operate, but they're there for you. And ITV have done a very good job breaking down the actual nuts and bolts and reality of how that actually takes place.
I was just Instagram DMing with David Eldridge, who I believe is the writer on that project.
Yes.
And yeah, we're having a nice chat about that. I think he might be appearing on the show sometime soon as well.
He's great. He's a great writer, and he's done extremely well. And all the rewrites that went along as we did it is just fantastic. I mean, that's the one thing you'll see, that you won't think, oh, this it's so good. You won't even think what a great script. You'll just enjoy it, and that's always a sign of a great script, when you don't even think, oh, this is a good script. You just think, oh, this is a good show. I'm enjoying this.
Well, I think let's maybe set the table before we get to all things spy, because for a lot of people, they will know you for your comedy work, and some people will know you for your films. And when did that decision come to you? When did you want to enter into the world of film and TV, and why did you want to make that transition?
I was always acting from a very young age. From the age of 12, I was doing sketches at school. I did a school play when I was about 14, 15. And there was a show called Not the 9 O'Clock News that was on TV with some amazing... Yeah, I love the way you're punching the air, Catherine. It was a fantastic show. It was actually...
It's iconic.
It's an iconic show. If you don't know, it had Rowan Atkinson, Mel Smith, Griff Rhys-Jones, Pamela Stevenson, who was this amazing New Zealander who was just really funny at parties, and they found her. John Lloyd, the producer, just found her, and we just by chance fell upon one of the most talented women in Britain at the time. And they did a sketch show which was aimed at my generation at the time, which was 14 to 18-year-olds. And in those days, you don't have like pause, rewind. You watch a sketch and you perform it in the playground the next day. So for us, these actors were iconic. And Mel Smith was asked to come to a school play. I went to Holland Park School, which was a comprehensive school in the middle of central London. And he came along and watched this show. He couldn't have been more than 28, 29. I was about 15. And he was asked to come and say hello to the kids. He came backstage, and I was the only one who had the balls to go up to him and hug him. And I said, "You're so wonderful." And he said, very politely, "You were wonderful. You're really funny." And I didn't know what he was talking about. He kept saying, "You should really do this." I said, "Do what?" He goes, "You should do comedy." And I remember saying, I just did it. What do you mean? What else can I do? I didn't know he was saying you can do it as a profession. And amazingly, 15 years later, the first agency that took me on was his agency, Talkback Productions, which was belonged to Mel Smith and Griff Rhys-Jones. So by an amazing coincidence, I went a full circle. So I went into stand-up comedy and just kind of fell into it, really. And one thing led to another. And because I'd been doing acting, I was an actor before I was a stand-up comedian, but I was encouraged to do it. And becoming a stand-up comedian there's so many people want to do it, but it's like the sperm that fertilizes the egg. There's millions go towards it and only one gets through. And I was very lucky that the first time I went up, everyone laughed. And then very soon I got into it. And then my agents put me up for some auditions. Actually, I can tell you that the Mummy audition was extraordinary in those days. They said, "Where are you now?" They rang me on I had a mobile phone. I'd only just got my mobile phone, which I bought. If I bought a motorcycle, they gave you a free mobile phone. That's the only way I got a mobile phone. And they rang me. He goes, "There's an audition in an hour." I said, "What do I do?" He goes, "Go to this shop in Soho. There's we're going to fax you the pages. Then you go to this room. So I've got these pages. I went into this room and they said hello, and all these Hollywood producers were sat there. And they said, okay, we got it. What's your name? And let's read the script. And it was like, I had one line on one page, nothing on the next page. Then I had another line on the other page. And we did it. And the director said, okay, well, let's do it again. But this time, what I want you to do, I said, sorry, are you giving me notes? He said, yeah. I said, but you all had more to say than I had. And he goes, well, you can do it better. I said, no, I can't. I can't do it. I've given you the best performance that these lines are going to get. And they were like, okay, what do you suggest? I said, let's just put the script away. Where's the camera? Let me just talk. Here's the character. And I just did the character for them there and then. And they booked me straight away. They goes, what are you doing between April and September? And this was like end of March. And I said, well, whatever I'm doing, I do have a couple of comedy club gigs, and I do want to do them. Because, oh no, you're not going to do them. And I said, well, I really need to be paid because I've worked very hard. I did open spots. He goes, oh, we'll get you paid. And I remember my first check, my first Hollywood check that came through. It said £120 for 2 missed comedy club gigs. I remember thinking, good. I'm glad they paid that, because I didn't want to miss the gigs. So I was very happy to get that. Sorry, I'm talking too much, but basically that was it. And that was the beginning. And just before I did that, I did a part in Notting Hill as well, which was cut, unfortunately. And I wish they'd cut me completely. And here's a bit of a scoop. The Hollywood kind of distributors didn't like the movie Notting Hill being multicultural. So they goes, yeah, let's just make it a white area. So they cut out all the the only ethnic minority who survived was my mate Sanjeev Bhaskar from Goodness Gracious Me. He survived, but all the rest of us got cut, except for they kept me as the guy giving the orange juice over to Hugh Grant, which he then buys and spills over Julia Roberts. So I kind of looked like an extra. They cut my lines. So a lot of people in the area where I lived in West London, they said, I just saw you in Notting Hill. Do you do a lot of extra work? And I couldn't really say, look, they cut me out. So that's how it happened. But then The Mummy was the first big movie. And that was great. You know, if you ask, being a stand-up comedian, does that help you? And I think it does, because they rang me. I was living in Hounslow. The director rang me. Stephen Summers rang me. And he goes, hey, Ahmed, we've been talking about this, and I think you're right. What you said about that Hollywood cannot write for Middle Eastern characters, you're absolutely right. And it's all like two-dimensional. What you can do, just have a thick skin, just improvise. Every now and again, I'll just say, that's not funny. Shut up. Don't do that. Hey, stop it. But don't be hurt. Just give me something else. And that way, if something sticks, I'll get the credit, and and we'll get a good movie, which is what we did. I just kept talking and saying all kinds of nonsense, which they kind of kept. A lot of it they cut, but that's how it worked. Was they knew I wasn't going to do lines that were kind of racist, or just the way they saw Middle Eastern people. In fact, there was a couple of things they kept where I wasn't on set, where I think John Hannah's coming down a rope, and my stunt guy was coming down the rope. So he comes down the rope and he goes, oh my God, what's that smell? And my arse comes into shot. And he goes, oh, there you go. So it's a typical like smelly Arab kind of thing. But that was my stunt guy, and I wasn't there that day. So I wasn't there to stand up for myself, say, hey guys, we can do better than arse smelling jokes. But that was it really. That's how it started. And after that, I was very lucky to get roles in movies like Gladiator and The World Is Not Enough. It was a Bond movie. Just these little parts. I became like the ethnic scumbag specialist. So just very grateful to be in the movie, because you're in the movie. And I remember lots of comedians saying, you're so lucky you're doing that. I said, yeah, but it's just a small part. Because, mate, I'd give my right hand to be in that in a movie like that, which is what actually Robert Redford said when on the first day of filming. The director, Tony Scott, said, Omid was in my brother's film, Gladiator, because Tony Scott was the director. And there were Geordies. And Tony Scott had a slightly more Geordie accent than Ridley Scott. He goes, he's in my brother's movie. He was very, very proud of his older brother. And I was in Gladiator. And I said to Robert Redford, it's just a small part. And he said, "Oh my God." Because you know what they say, there are no small roles, only small actors. And I would have given my right arm to be in that movie. I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I've done it. Like there were 7 lead parts in movies I've had where they've not even seen the light of day. They were cut or they never even edited together. They just bailed on the movie. And I wasted 2 years." He said, 2 years doing those movies. And I'd much rather have a small part in a big movie than, to quote him, than a lead part in a piece of shit. So it felt good to have that from Robert Redford.
Well,
It's so
you did some.
interesting.
Go ahead, Kathryn.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's just so interesting. It's just so interesting to hear you talk about how your comedic playfulness and that more comedy focused performance where you're not just running everything through a script and it's not totally ironclad. It sounds like a lot of the people you worked with in Hollywood were quite receptive to you going, hang on, let's just take some of these sort of parameters off of the performance for a sec and just try things and see what fits the characters.
Yeah, I think that was it. I mean, it's not something I advocate all actors to do. Don't just start improvising. There has to be a kind of agreement before. So the agreement was, here's a scene, and you'll do. And also, I was so green, by the way. I was so green. My first scene we shot was me in The Mummy saying, "Step over the threshold." That was actually the very first thing. It's a close up on me. That was the very first shot of the movie, and then. The director, when we're by the cage, I think Brendan Fraser's in a cage and we're talking to him. I'm in the background of the shot and he said, hey Omid, you're chewing. Stop chewing. And then we do another take and he goes, "Stop chewing." And I said, "What's he talking about?" And then someone came across and said, "You're chewing during the scene." I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he goes, "Come and have a look." And they don't usually let the actor goes, "Come and have a look at the monitor." And I was so green, I thought I was a movie star. So if I'm not speaking, I should be going, I should be like looking like a movie star. So that kind of, my eyebrows are up. And he goes, "That's true." I said, "Oh my God, I wasn't even aware I was doing." So I was very green, but also very open to being told what to do. So there was a scene, for example, we're in a marketplace and you see Rachel Weisz has put on a veil and she looks very beautiful. And then I get chucked out of a marketplace and all these women are hitting me. I get chucked. We don't know what's happened. Then I shout, "Most women thank me for doing that." So you don't know what's he's talking about. And then they said, "Oh, that was really funny." So, but then it never made the cut because they just thought, it's a PG-13 and it looks like you've done something really inappropriate and we don't want to do that. But again, I wasn't hurt. I wasn't upset. I kept throwing stuff at them and I see there was some stuff they've kept. There was stuff they kept even when I didn't even know the cameras were rolling. There was some stuff that I was doing with Brendan where he was chucking a rope at me and the camera was very, very far away and they kept that in the movie. He keeps chucking a rope at me and pulls it back and he hits me. I go, "Hey," like that. And it's just a shot from very far away. But if I think the quality for actors, if any actors listening to this, is always have a thick skin and don't be offended if they say, "No, that was crap." Or because people can be harsh. No, don't do that. Don't do that. What you should do, directors are more sensitive with actors now. They goes, "That was good, but can you try it this way?" Back in the 90s, they just said, "That's crap. Don't do that. Do it. Give me something else." And I think that's the key. If you just have a slightly thicker skin.
Well, we're at The Mummy, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about your death scene, because as there was your first big film, and you're being asked to die in such a dramatic way. How did you prepare for that, and what was it like to shoot that scene?
Well, there is a story there. There's quite a few kind of movie mistakes, and somehow you get to see my penis in that shot, which is like, it's a big thing. Omid Djalili shows his penis, and I have to explain what happened was I was supposed to do another scene, and it was B unit, because Ahmed, we need to get a shot of you crawling along, and Stephen wants to do a shot of the crack of your ass, like those British builders, so like your trousers are low. And then the makeup, the costume person said, I think what you have to do is not wear any underwear, so that we can just pull your trousers down, then you get a good shot of your crack. I said, fine. And then what happens is you wear no underwear, but because I was wearing boots and the boots are wrapped up with these bandages, they suddenly changed the scene because, no, we need to do a death scene now. And the death scene involved me ripping open my shirt. So you've got Industrial Light and Magic doing special effects. So there's a guy with long hair. It was like the early days of ILM. And because what we needed to do is the scarab goes into your foot, watch it go into your foot, goes up your leg, and then it goes up your stomach. Then you rip open your shirt, so then we'll see a lining. It goes into your stomach, then it goes up your neck and into your brain. That's what you have to act. And it was only time to do one take. So there was no time to put on underwear. So I really went for it. And I ripped open my shirt and I ripped my trousers as well. So everything was flapping around and I fell on the ground. And I'll never forget Stephen Summers taking off he goes, I saw his dick. How come I saw his dick? How did that happen? His dick came out. We got to do it again. And they said, we can't do it again. We got to move on. There's no time. So they had to try and work around. They worked around it. But unfortunately in the film, if you look carefully, if you go on YouTube, unfortunately, there is some flesh that you can see that shouldn't be. Sorry, Kathryn, you shouldn't really be even hearing this, but it's got into movie history now that Omid Djalili showed his penis, but it was only because there was no time to put my underwear on, and it was a last-minute decision to shoot that scene. So there you go.
Honestly, I'm just impressed that what we see in the film is your one take. I think it's such a good performance, and
it's
to know
one
that
take,
you
yes.
just went for it, and that was what's in the final cut. That's huge.
It is, yeah, and there are little things where I see it's a bit dark, and it was an improv where there is hieroglyphics of someone. It's a warning of a person being eaten by scarab beetles. So there's a guy with his arm, and I just go like that, and it's a meme that's being used a lot. Like you see these girls in America shaking like some soda, goes, is there a better sound than this? And someone's put in they use me as a meme a lot, so it's very funny. But it was just unfortunately it was a little bit dark. They didn't get a second take of that. So that was all one take. So yes, thank you for the compliment.
Well, I'm glad that you could at least put that to bed as the reason why you perhaps showed more than you wanted to at the time.
It was, yes, but it's a famous scarab beetle scene, and it was the whole idea of scarab beetles going into you and eating your brain. That is and then the other story with that, and I can tell this because I've just met my stunt double, the same stunt double from The Mummy, a guy called Peter Pedrero, who looks exactly like me, but he's just a bit more stocky and a bit more stunty, and he had to run into the wall. Now I do the running down the corridor, then he smacks his head against a polystyrene wall and then gets pulled back with a harness. So it's boom, bang, and he hits. And the thing was, I wasn't there for that. And I had ripped open my shirt. So here's another big movie mistake, is Omid Djalili smacks his head and then he goes back. He'd ripped his shirt open, but when he smacks his head and goes down, his shirt is closed. Like, what an idiot. And I said to my stunt person, I said, you saw me die. He goes, oh, sorry, man, I didn't realize. I said, I'm now in forever movie history as my mistake, but it was your fault. He goes, yeah, mate, I'm so sorry. So that's another big movie mistake is all. So these are iconic things I'm giving you, but some, they just happen by accident.
I'm just enjoying the accents, actually. You're coming out with some crackers. The Tony Scott is still reverberating in my head, but I think we'll come back to Tony.
Tony Scott, aye, Geordie. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No. Well, 1999, big year for Omid, because same year, a couple of months later, you're in a Bond film.
Yeah, Bond movie. That was The World Is Not Enough, which was with Pierce Brosnan, and I often used to joke about that. They keep you there for like a week, which was great. So you socialized most of the time, and we only filmed about 2 or 3 days. So Sophie Marceau is in that movie, and she had a chaperone, and on set she seemed to kind of see that I was a normal person. And I think what happens on a Bond movie, people behave in a different way because you're around, and it's an iconic film set. And what they do, you should know, on these big spy movies is at lunchtime they give you demonstrations of a jetpack. Someone on a jetpack flies around while you're eating food out of a kind of cardboard carton. You think, what's that? He goes, oh, we're just giving the cast and crew a show. There's a bloke in a jetpack. I said, can I have a go? They goes, no, you idiot, you've got to be trained for that. Then the next break, they bring out the sandwiches, and they goes, oh, have a look, there's a bloke on the motorcycle helicopter. So this motorcycle goes up in the air, and you're kind of munching on a sandwich, saying that's pretty cool. And so in that time, I was sat with Sophie Marceau, and she goes, do you guys want to go for dinner tonight? So me, Sophie Marceau, and her chaperone, we went out for dinner every night, and it just got to the point where, I was doing my act. I was doing everything. I was doing everything to entertain Sophie Marceau. So on the 5th night, because you coming out for dinner, I felt like, do you know what? I've shot my load. I've got nothing else to say. I've done my whole act. I've done 3 Edinburgh shows for her. I'm embarrassed. I can't just have normal conversations but you are so entertaining. You are so normal. You are so funny. And I felt like saying, I'm doing my act. There's nothing else I can give you. But it was a really extraordinary experience being on a Bond movie, because it's iconic, and you're very aware that all the stunts are real. That they tell you there's no special effects in these movies. We do all stunts for real. And when you see them actually practice the stunts and do it, so you're not just there doing your scenes. You're allowed to watch, and it really is. Those stunt guys don't get paid enough. One of them even got hurt. So that they have to do these stunts for real. And I said, why don't you just use special effects? And that is the USP of the whole franchise. It's and I'm doing all my. I just think it's Bond to me is so funny, because it's not, especially the Roger Moore days, where Roger Moore goes, well, where are we filming now? Because we're going to an ice station in Antarctica. Yeah, I think I might wear my safari suit. And what are we doing next? Because we're going to go into space, the space station. Yeah, I think I might wear my safari suit. Because where are you going now? Because we're going to go on a safari. Because I might wear my wetsuit. It's just so stupid. The whole thing is, and I always thought it was funny because those Bond movies had such an influence on the Bond quip. Like when Bond fights someone and he chucks him in a bath full of water and he throws in the electric heater and the guy gets electrocuted, and when he's dead, he doesn't call an ambulance, he doesn't call emergency services, he just goes, shocking. It's the Bond quip. They say something funny. And I think other films start using that particular USB, like when, Schwarzenegger puts a pipe through someone's heart and he gets killed and there's steam coming out the pipe, because that's right, let off some steam.
Let off some steam, Bennett.
And I think that whole thing is it's the Bond franchise, which then unfortunately can affect younger people. When I was growing up, I remember my sister cracking an egg, and she'd let the oil run to boiling oil. She'd cracked an egg, and some egg flew up into her face. Did I show empathy? Did I call the ambulance? I just said, no, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Because of course Bond has become Arnold Schwarzenegger now. so it's the whole thing is ridiculous to me, which is why when you're it's amazing that Bond lives in such a world of fantasy, but the actual mechanics of making it is very real. And that's what I appreciated about the actual making of that movie. They don't cut corners. They spend time, and they really try and give the fans something special. So I'm going to get my glasses back on. Excuse me. That's my left ear. I can't even get my glasses on. Look at that. So old. There you go. There's Picasso.
Perfect.
It's my impression of Picasso. Sorry, go ahead. Next question.
Well, we're in Bond territory. I'll take the next one. And you know, we've got the comedy background there, but you've been working in film and TV up until that point. But the Mummy in this, they feel like very big productions compared to some like British television. Was that an intimidating set to step onto for The World Is Not Enough?
No, I tell you what, because at that time I was literally going from, I mean, this is why it's extraordinary you're talking to me. I am literally the most lucky, and can you hold on one second?
Yeah, you do think.
This is ridiculous. There you go, that's better. I'm back. No, this is why it's remarkable that we're talking, because when I reflect on this, there was a period of time where I was in a number of very iconic movies, one after the other. I mean, I remember even Dennis Hopper, who I met. I worked with Dennis Hopper in that same period. And he said, if you're in one iconic movie in your career, that's great. If you're in two, that's great. And Dennis Hopper said that he'd been in five. He'd been Apocalypse Now, Easy Rider, and he mentioned the other three, which I've just forgotten. And I was very in quick succession. I mean, you don't know you're making these movies. The Mummy, I didn't realize was going to be so played over and over again around the world, everywhere. And I'll tell you a little story about that on the set of Spy Game, when we were in Morocco, when they were showing The Mummy on television every single day, 6 days a week, 6 times a day. I didn't know that was going to be so well seen. I didn't realize Gladiator would win an Oscar. I didn't realize that The World Is Not Enough would be such a. So I'm going from one set to the other, and no, it was. For some, you become so entitled. Just think, well, this is my life. I'm just going to do blockbusters. You get offered a movie. He goes, what's the budget? It goes £10 million. You go, forget it. I'm not doing a Mickey Mouse shoot. You actually start thinking like that. So it was not in the slightest intimidating being with Pierce Brosnan, who actually remembered me. I met him on Mamma Mia 2, and he just said, "Oh, mate," and he gave me a hug. And I thought, "You actually remember me from that movie?" He goes, "Of course, you know." And you forget that because you're a stand-up comedian, they see you slightly differently. You're not just some actor coming in. Some of them have seen you at the Comedy Store. They've been out. They've seen you on telly doing stand-up, and later on, it was like arriving on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean in Los Angeles with BBC America having just shown my Live at the Apollo set. So Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush had just watched it together for some reason. They were in a hotel and they said, "Let's watch this. Do you like stand-up? Let's watch it." They're together. So when I arrived on set 2 days later, he goes, "Oh, mate, we just saw your..." So it's amazing how being a stand-up, that people do see you slightly differently. And I remember on The Mummy, we were talking about what cars have we all got? And people were talking about, I've got a Bentley, I've got this. And I said, I've got a Nissan Micra. And everyone laughed. And then John Hannah said, "Guys, just so you know, Omid is a comedian. He's always joking." And I said, "No, I genuinely have a Nissan Micra. That's all I've got." And so they think you're joking even when you're not. So it was very it was very liberating in that sense. So you're not nervous, you're not kind of shy. You can talk to people, and you could see people are nervous to talk to the big stars. But I was out having dinner with Sophie Marceau, and she would never be seen dead with a small bit part actor. But for some reason, I was a comedian. It was slightly different. So yeah, and then doing Gladiator was going on to that set as well, where it's massive. To be with Oliver Reed was a real pleasure. To be on a set where I've never seen such massive sets, and to have Ridley Scott say, "Okay, let's go through the scene. So Omid and Ollie, if you can walk to this spot here, camera 4 will pick you up here, and then if you can move literally 10 feet to your right, camera number 15 will pick you up here, and then I want to finish off here with camera number 4." And I said, "You're covering this with 15 cameras?" He said, "Yes." I mean, these are the days with movie making. I'd never seen a Steadicam before. These 2 big German guys he'd hired, they were just Steadicam people. And I said, "What is this?" He goes, "Oh yeah, we've been using them a couple of years. You use a harness and then you can just walk around, but the camera's still." I'd never seen anything like it. So it was a whole new experience, but because everyone seemed calm. And I remember asking Ridley Scott. And this was a big moment. This is they do these things for your ego, I know. And I say, because if you got any questions, I said, Ridley, you never give acting notes to people. You just say, stand here, camera 12 will pick you up. Why don't you give acting notes? And he just took a puff of his cigarette and he just said, if you're in a Ridley Scott movie, you don't need notes. You've learnt your lines and you give it to me straight away. He never gave me a note, never gave anyone a note. And I just went, thanks. You're so kind. I'm really good. I know. I'm really good. Don't snort. So it's so when you're on those big movies, they make you feel very, 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 very calm. So yeah, so Gladiator was an extraordinary, really extraordinary experience. In fact, it was difficult to talk to people, and you just start talking to anyone who's around. And there's this German bloke was there before my scene with Oliver Reed, and I said, "What's your name?" He goes, "Hans." I said, "What do you do?" Because I do the music. And he was so young and so geeky looking. I never for a second thought this is who was going to become Hans Zimmer. I never thought I just thought some geeky German bloke. I said, he looks a bit, awkward. I'll sit with him. I said, so what have you done? He goes, yeah, I've done some movies. I said, he started reeling off these movies I'd never heard. I said, have you done any movies I've heard of? Which is such a crude thing to say. And he said, you are from the UK? I said, yeah. He goes, I did a game show with Henry Kelly. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Going for Gold. And I went, Going for Gold. He goes, yeah, I wrote that. I said, you wrote Going for Gold. I said, everybody knows that tune. He goes, yeah. It's only 4 notes, but it's very memorable. And then I just said, mate, when Germany invaded Poland, that was memorable, but it wasn't a good thing. And he got what do you mean by that? I said, I remember it, but I'm not saying it's a great tune. And he just sat back and he watched me do my scene with Oliver Reed where he grabs my balls and does all that. So afterwards I said to him, how are you going to put music over that? Because he was there to look at scenes to get inspiration. He said, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He goes, what is the smallest musical instrument you can think of? All right, where's he going with this? I said, a piccolo? He goes, yeah. That is still bigger than your penis. And he walked off. And I went, okay, fair enough. I said, nice, you got me back. Nice one. But that's the thing, you see, there are so many people milling around. You don't know who you're talking to. So you just got to be careful.
I feel like so many of your stories from across your whole career are to do with you going up to incredibly famous people and finding the human behind the iconic name. I think as audience members, we've not met Brad Pitt, we've not met Sophie Marceau or Pierce Brosnan. And I think it's so easy for us to just get so caught up in the iconic celebrity version of these people.
Yes.
What was it like finding the human being behind these icons?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because someone like Robert Redford, if you're in the film business, you know that there's something very presidential about him. And in fact, they told Bill Clinton when he became president, watch videos of, Robert Redford and you'll learn how to be presidential. Films like, All the President's Men and all that. There was something about him. In fact, whenever Robert Redford walked into a room, we all stood up. I felt he was the president. There's something about him that was very regal, presidential. He just had such gravitas, and there was something, but also very kind. And I remember I was so nervous to meet him, and I really wanted to make him laugh. So when Tony Scott introduced us, I thought I'll do something funny. I'll throw him off. But he came back with such a fantastic one-liner. Tony Scott says, he goes, Bobby, this is Omid. Omid plays the character of Dume. Omid, this is Bobby Redford. And he turned around and he shook my hand. He goes, hey, nice to meet you. And I just put on an accent. I said, Mr. Redford, may I say, you're my favorite actor in Hawaii Five-0. When you're on the boat going da 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 da, you're the best thing in Hawaii Five-0. And he just looked me up and down. He goes, thank you. You were great in Dr. Zhivago, but you've let yourself go. I thought, whoa! He was so quick. And I think that's the thing when you're with people who are, very emotionally intelligent people. If you throw them a comedy curveball, they'll take a moment and think, okay, he's playing, I'll play back. And he was like that. He was very, very kind with his time, you know, the scenes I had with him. He even said, I've written a new scene for you. Are you going to be with us in Shepperton? Because we were filming in Casablanca. I said, no, not really. He goes, no, I think you will be with it. There's a scene I want you to do. And he was very hands-on with the whole thing. You know, he'd always check because he's a director himself, and Tony wanted to learn from him. So he would say, I really think Omid should come back with another scene. So I got another scene just to hang out with him a bit longer. But it was on that movie where I had my, I think, greatest moment. I actually had a scene with Robert Redford and Brad Pitt, and didn't have to get to say anything. I'm just in the middle of them, looking at them while they're talking.
10 minutes late. Nathan, we're okay. I just got hung up. Look, we got zero room for error here. You're right. You're right. Won't happen again.
But when they said that's a wrap on Brad, Bobby, and Omid, and someone said, okay, so the cars are parked. We're going to go back to unit base. The cars are parked across a marketplace. We're going to have to walk single file. It's just 50 meters, and the cars are on the other end. Now, I think I mentioned before that the film The Mummy was, whenever it's bought on some of these Middle Eastern channels, we were filming this in 2000. So The Mummy had already come out in May 1999, and they'd bought it. A major national channel had bought The Mummy. And what they do, just for usage, they show it every day, 6 times a day. So as soon as it finishes, they play it again. So on the major, like BBC One or BBC Two, The Mummy is on every day. So the whole of Casablanca is watching this movie. You can't, for a whole week, you can't miss it. Every time I went back, the movie was on for a whole week. So we're walking along through this marketplace. So there's a bodyguard in single file. Bodyguard, Robert Redford, Brad Pitt, me, and another bodyguard behind us. And you can see these Moroccans walking past, and they see this blonde, good-looking 65-year-old man, and they kind of look at him, and they think, hey, I recognize his face. But they walk by that time they're seeing Brad Pitt. They goes, hey, I know. Someone else goes, he's familiar. Then they saw me. They goes, the guy from The Mummy. And literally, these people swarmed around me, and they were getting photographs and signatures. And I wish, unfortunately, the photographer, Mr. Hampshire, has passed away now. He said to me, I've got a great picture for you, where there's a picture of me signing autographs with my face, like kind of going like this, with Brad Pitt and Robert Redford as blurry shapes in the background, looking back and unrecognized, just with me signing autographs. Unfortunately, David Hampshire was his name. He passed away. And I kept asking his wife, waiting for the time where it's appropriate, can I just come back and look at some of his B-reels? That photograph of me, she goes, no, we're in mourning right now. It's okay. So there is a photograph that exists, and one day I'll get my hands on it. But it was quite an iconic moment for me. That's pure egotism, but I had to share that.
No, it's spectacular.
Thank you.
Now, I know we're sort of drifting towards Spy Game, but there are a lot of Bond fans that listen to this show, and there are some nerdy, in-depth questions I feel I need to ask you about The World Is Not Enough.
Go
now,
ahead.
firstly, like, you know, you're a big name by this point. They're bringing you into this film, especially in the UK. You're a household name, I'd say, around that point. Are you doing a sort of casting for it, or did they call you specifically to do that role?
It was the role actually was something else.
Okay.
I was given, there was a Turkish intelligence role I had, which was a very big role, which was there for 20 minutes of the movie, and then it got cut. And then my agents said, okay, that character doesn't exist anymore. They've lost the location. We're now moving to Azerbaijan. It's going to be a whole thing in Azerbaijan, and they can only film in a place called Cuenca in Spain. So Turkey is out. So that all the people in the Turkey section are gone. I said, okay, but they have a bonus role just so that you can be in a movie, and it's in Cuenca. It's a foreman. And you've only got 2 or 3 lines. And I kind of should have said no, because they really wanted me to be in a Bond movie, and that other role was really great, and it was substantial, and it was something I could really get my teeth into. But part of me just thought, well, you know, they're very kind, Barbara Broccolita said, look, here's not take this other role, but just so we can hang out with you. It's not like we want you to just be part of it and you can say you're in a Bond movie. But my agent was saying, I think we should say no, because if they're so pally with you, maybe wait for another Bond movie where you can do a better role. And I just thought, well, you know, I'll probably never get the opportunity again. So I did it. So I probably shouldn't have done it. And it was a much smaller role.
Благая весть, часовня спасена.
Send the pipe around.
It's going to take weeks and cost millions. Your father approved this route.
Then my father was wrong. Do it.
Davidov.
I'll talk to you.
So that's how the role came about. So thinking about what Robert Redford was going to say to me later, I did think there is a thing, there's no small roles, only small actors. So I just thought, you know, I've been in Gladiator and everybody was so, actually no, Gladiator hadn't come out by then yet. So, but people already knew that it was a big movie. And I just thought, well, you know, I'd get my face in another movie, it'll be fine. So I took the role. And I kind of regretted it because, but then a good gag, I made a gag out of it as well, because people always say, aren't you sick and tired of being typecast as kind of ethnic scumbags? And I always say, I did play the second Azerbaijani all pipe attendant, which is a major departure for me in my career. I've diversified.
And sort of in that nerdy vein, then obviously.
Yes.
The role condensed, these things happen. We just had the screenwriter of the film, Bruce Fierstein, on weeks ago and spoke about the film and went through many permutations along the way. The lines you did versus what is actually on screen in the end, is there anything more that you did that was cut or anything like that?
Oh, loads but just absolute nonsense.
Okay.
Absolute rubbish of trying to just make my role bigger. And I was really nervous that they put any of them in. They kept going, cut, no, he would never say that. No, wrong accent. Why are you talking in a Scouse accent? No, stop it. Just do that. Actually, I pushed it a bit too much. I think I was having too much fun. But no, I can confirm the lines I said were written and I said them and that was it.
I just love that you took the chance. You were like, I'm on a Bond set. I'm gonna give them what they want, and you just went in with, again, that playfulness to have the bravery within one of the biggest franchises in the world to say, right, they've got me on set. Now I'm gonna give them a little bit of something different that might not be in the script.
Yeah, and all the actors, we were all doing it together. We'd like conspire. What can we do now? There was the Danish actor and there was a Samoan actor. We're just like, conspire. What should we do? What should we do? And we kept doing stuff, and actually they got called out more than me because they were trying it on as well. So no, it's just a bit of fun just to keep because you know filming can be really boring. 95% of it is just people having a laugh together and people talking. The actual filming stuff has to be professional, but once they feel they've got it on a Bond movie, they do say, we're going to do a few extra takes and you can do what you like. Let's play around with it a bit. So you go with what they say. But if they say, we've got to move on, then you move on. But if they say, let's have some fun, Ridley Scott did the same thing. Let's do a take where you can just do whatever you want. And that was really fun as well. But they didn't use any of that, thank God.
I think it was probably the cartwheels you were doing in the background that really threw off those takes.
Yes. In Gladiator, I was using my walking stick as a golf club. And I kept teeing off. I said, can we just start off with me teeing off? Because no, I kept hitting rocks. I said, I invented golf as we know it. My slave trader created the game golf. It was very stupid, but no.
All right, well, let's move us forward officially to 2001 Spy Game. A film. It's one of the favorites of our listeners, our viewers. We've interviewed about 8 people that have been on that film now, including you. You're adding to those ranks. And is there anything you could tell us about the production that sort of sticks with you for Spy Game?
Straight away. First of all, no health and safety. That's the thing. Now, Spy Game was probably one of the last films where considerations around health and safety have become much more stringent. I'll say it one more time. Definitely health and safety. Spy Game is probably one of the last movies where health and safety then became more stringent, especially with British crews. Bear in mind, some of those big movies I did back to back had the same crews. I think we had the Mummy crew, Gladiator crew, Spy Game crew were pretty much, there was a lot of overlaps, and there was, as you know, in the end of the movie, there's a big terrorist attack where a motorcycle goes in and they blow up this building. So again, like his brother Ridley Scott, 15 cameras, and they're going to blow up the building in real time. It's a building that needs to be demolished, so it's packed full of explosives. So a motorcyclist goes in, that's shot, then you put a dummy on the motorcycle, it goes in, and then there's a countdown to explosives. And there it was, I don't know how many there were, but there was enough to blow that building to smithereens. And they told me, you're on the opposite side, so we're on an opposite building, not far off. I mean, we're talking about, it's an apartment block. So one apartment block, the next apartment block was about, you could walk over in about 40 meters, maybe 30 meters. It's like almost next to it. So I'm on the roof there. And I said, so what's going to happen? He goes, yeah, they'll go in, and then all you need to do is duck behind the wall. You're sitting on there, and then you see it go in, and then when it explodes, just duck. I said, all right, that's fine. And then they do the countdown. It's a 2-minute countdown from like 120, 119 seconds. And then these shields go up. The crew have got shields and hard hats. And then with 30 seconds to go, I said, hang on, this is, how come you're all covered? They went 10. No, I said, but this is ridiculous. You're all covered. I'm not. And then you'll be fine. 3, 2, 1. I'm not kidding. An explosion goes bang. And this rock comes flying over my head. I ducked and the rock goes over my head. I've ducked for my life. The rock must have only gone about 10 feet above my head, but it was blown hard from the bottom of the thing. And then it all finished. Everyone clapped. Tony Scott says, let's look at the cameras. There's a big 15 monitors here. And then someone starts laughing at mine. They goes, look at Omid shit himself. So they go to Omid. So the thing comes over and I dive. And they go, let's watch Omid shit himself again. They watched that about 10 times. Someone else goes, how did it go? You got to see Omid shit himself. Brad, come and have a look at Omid shit. Robert, come here. Have a look at Omid shit himself. So they're all laughing at me, diving behind a wall I'm sat on. and of course I'm laughing as well. You don't want to make out that, you know, you're a spoil sport or anything like that. But I think after that, that kind of like, do your own stunts, you know, be there. But this piece of rock could have killed me, and it went flying over everyone's heads. And they just said, yeah. Then after someone apologized, because we did not expect the trajectory of a rock coming, because these are real explosives. They actually blew, and the whole thing came down in front of us. It was like Twin Towers, just boom, but it was a big block, and there was smoke everywhere. So yes, I would say that health and safety transformed overnight after that movie. You both seem speechless every time I give you a story. Has no one talked about these things? Is this a completely new?
As I say, I've interviewed so many people from Spy Game at this point, and I've not heard anything about that at all. And you tend not to get many stories about Tony Scott. It tends to be more about just the production of Robert Redford. So hearing it from that perspective is interesting as well. And a lot of people we've spoken to have been sort of behind the camera on that film, the DP, the writer. And yeah, just that sort of boots on the ground experience of actually being there, because we haven't spoken to Robert Redford or Brad Pitt, not yet anyway. I'm working my way there. But yeah, I'll get there if I keep trying. It's just great that they're just sort of a DIY about it all, and that's only 25 years ago, really.
It was, yeah. We filmed it. I'll never forget. It was all throughout January, February, March of 2000, and I will say this about Tony Scott: he was a complete workaholic. And I said, did you ever sleep? He goes, nah, and neither does me brother. He goes, they would come in after filming, go into his room. He'd have his whole team until midnight. Then they wake up at 4 in the morning and continue. They were working on 4 hours sleep because they wanted to get every shot right. And it was a very technical film to get right. There was lots of stuff about the storyline was quite complicated as well. And there was lots of discussions of, does this work, and will that scan? But they're very, very hardworking, many takes. And I think I probably picked up some of my bad acting habits from Brad Pitt, because Brad Pitt always refused to learn lines. He'd just show up. He had an idea of it and he just improvised. And I'd learnt my lines and then I would improvise around him. And then I realized there's no point learning lines because he's not going to say the lines. So I would just show up. I often would just show up. And then Robert Redford said, would he just goddamn say the lines? And he would refuse to do it, which is they had very different ways of working. So there was a bit of tension between the two of them. There was, it was like a kind of father-son relationship. You've got an old CIA person looking out for the younger CIA person. And I found the story very satisfying and very, very exciting to watch. But the movie, as you know, got ruined because it had a suicide bombing aspect in it. And the film was stupidly released November 2001, when they really should have sat on it a bit longer. It was not the right time to release it at all. I mean, the film was ready to go. 9/11 happened, so it killed I think the first release, and then they got a second. It's like as if I think they give you a slot and you just have to go with it. So they were given November 2001. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I remember. And nobody had the appetite to watch another film which had a suicide bombing ending, bringing down a building. So it's a shame. So the film did very badly at the box office, and I know that really upset Tony Scott. So the making of a movie is very, very difficult. It's like blocks of Jenga, and even at the very last minute, everything can fall apart. Like I did a film called Casanova with Heath Ledger, and it was meant to be a PG-13 Disney movie, but about Casanova. But when they threw in the first cut, they said this is not going to pass PG-13. There are two aspects, and none is being defiled. You hear it, and there is oral sex happening underneath a table. If you remove these two scenes, we'll get the PG-13. And then Disney said, well, we like the idea of having a 17 movie. And they did that, and people went along expecting 17, like something a bit saucy. Nothing happened. It was a PG-13 movie, and it tanked. But then you realize, with the big secrets of these films, which we all know now, studios are always balancing the books. Some films can be a big hit, and to keep the money from that hit, you need to have a few films that are not exactly flops, but don't make as much money as they should. So I think Casanova was a $60 million movie, only took $9 million. Only took $9 million in the box office. So, but that, obviously offset some other wins that Disney had. So that's an insight. If no one knew that, that's the way they balance up the books. But it was, I thought Spy Game was a wonderful movie, and learning from those people. But it was also, I came to regret something though. You can have chats with actors and it's really good, but you should never kiss and tell. And I remember 8 years afterwards, I got sucked in by a young reporter who was, I think she's only 24 or something, and it was for my tour in 2008. She goes, well, you've done some big movies. Can you tell us anything about anyone? And I said, nah, I don't kiss and tell. That's the way my career's continued. I don't say anything about anyone, because there must be something. And I thought, well, she goes, please, at the beginning of my career, if you give me something, I would really, because I've really enjoyed this conversation. I said, okay, look, I'll tell you a story. It's not big, but this is what happened. Brad Pitt just got married to Jennifer Aniston, and we're in a taxi together, and he was asking me about marriage. How long have you been married? I said, I've been married 8 years. And he goes, do you have any tips? I said, well, Brad, what they say about marriage and relationships, they go in 3 stages. Stage 1 is blind love, and soon that finishes. It can last there for a year, but it doesn't last too long. It's a year where you just love everything about that person you love unconditionally. And then it gets to stage 2, where you slip into this thing where everything you liked about them previously is now really gets on your nerves. And it's basically you don't understand the baggage of that person. And a lot of people stay in that stage. They get cold love, they start arguing, and they might get divorced, or they stay together until the kids go to school, then they get divorced. Or they just have cold love and the relationship fizzles, or they stay together to the bitter end. But it doesn't have to be like that. You can get into stage 3. If you go through stage 3, stage 2, you can get to a stage 3 where you have better conflict resolution, you understand the baggage, you get to be close friends, and that's the most important thing. So if you get through it, he goes, oh man, in stage 1, 2, 3, I love that. That's really, hey, Ahmed, that's really beautiful. Thank you for. And then his phone went. He goes, I got to take the phone call. And it was obviously Jennifer, and he was like pacing outside the taxi. He didn't come back in the taxi for 10 minutes, and he sat back in, ashen faced. I said, "Are you okay?" He goes, "I think I just went into stage 2," like that. And I laughed, and he laughed, and that was a story I told. That was it. And then he laughed, and it was all fine. I told this story to the reporter. A week later, my agent in New York rings me livid. He goes, "Go on the internet now." I said, "What?" He goes, "Go on TMZ now." I said, "What?" He goes, "What have you done? I've just had Brad Pitt's agent screaming at me." I said, "What?" He goes, "Go on TMZ now." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "A website." I put on TMZ. And there was a picture of Brad and Jennifer Aniston split, like ripped in two, with me in the middle, with a very fat picture of me with a microphone. And it said, "Comedian admits to breaking up Brad and Jennifer." And I thought, oh my God, comedian admits. And it's this whole bullshit story of how I admitted to, I'd said something, then she got upset. So she rang him, and then they sat in the car, and then, because this is all Omid's fault. It's like some nonsense. And I said, "This is all nonsense. Just don't pay any attention to it." And they took it down, and they wanted me to comment. I said, "This is all complete nonsense." So, but for about a 3 or 4 days, that TMZ article was up, and it really upset a few people. So it taught me, like, you can't say anything to anybody. Now we can talk about this now. It's past the time, but there's, even if me as a socially responsible, emotionally intelligent person, now knowing that even then, 25 years ago, you can't talk about even a little story like that, which I thought would be just a little story about how, I really thought it would give you a little bit of wisdom about the 3 stages of marriage, just from one perspective. You can't even do that. That's going to get twisted and it'll get ruined. So there you go. Anyone listening, that's my lesson to any actor. Don't say anything about famous people.
You're settling a lot of scores in this chat.
Yes.
I like it. Like, you're just clarifying. This is the Wikipedia entries conversation, just so we can.
That cow. If I ever see that cow again, hoorah, I'll kill you.
Cut that. No. Well,
I find it so. I just find it so interesting that you, in your comedy work, it's your stand-up and it's your show, and you've got creative control over what you're putting out there. But then you're coming into these massive IPs where the creative control is as far away from you personally as it can be. But then you're still bringing your own spin into things. How do you kind of balance that as a performer? Because you're clearly very adept at taking the reins creatively, but also can slot into seemingly every type of IP available.
That's a lovely question. I just worked with the great Simon Callow, such a wonderful actor who was so funny and so, he was directing me in something, and he said, "Omid, I want you to go bigger." And I said, "Do you know who you're talking to?" And he said, "Oh, that's so funny, because on Shakespeare in Love," he goes, I had a note where in Shakespeare in Love, Gwyneth Paltrow pretends to be a boy. And then it's Simon Callow's character that shops her, and he has to come on and say, "That man is a woman," like that. And he did it. The director said, "Could you go a bit bigger with that?" He goes, "Do you know to whom you are speaking?" And I think he did it again and went so over the top. He goes, "I got lightheaded and I collapsed." And then Ben Affleck brought me to and said, "You're my hero," and all that stuff. He's such a funny person. But I learned from him that in answer to your question, Kathryn, is how do you deal with when you've had so much control on stage and then you come into a very big, you're a tiny cog in a big machine. I think the one thing I would say, we're all, as Simon says, he always signs off his emails to me, and he's to sign off his texts. We are all servants to art. And I think if you're part of something beautiful, part of something wonderful, and I remember watching films and thinking, I'd love to be part of this one day. I'd love to be part of this industry. They all look like they're having such a great time. They all look like they're all very, very intelligent people. And they seem to be the cream of the crop. And actually, when you realize at that level, there are lots of different, they say stand-up comedy is like the lowest art form, but it's also the most difficult to do. But at the highest level, you're talking about those big blockbusters. And because they have to work so well. They only employ people who are socially intelligent, emotionally there. They're not people who are crazy, because these things have to work like clockwork, and you need people who will get up on time. They're not going to cause a problem. So you're working with some of the most emotionally intelligent people, and then it rubs off on you. You hang around with people like Brad Pitt and Robert Redford. It has an effect. You see how they operate, and you see how directors work, and you watch the sheer efficiency of how they can move 100 extras to one side. How does that work? Oh, you've got a great DOP, you've got a great first AD, you've got a great second AD. So when you're there at that level, you kind of have to know your place in the cog. But what is your cog? What is your what is your reason for being there? Don't step outside that. But at the end of it, if you do it well and they keep you in the movie, you're part of something that is beautiful, it's impactful and eternal. And I think that's the thing when you look at a film like Gladiator. Everybody who's in that movie is so proud, because we're thinking like aliens somewhere are watching that movie somewhere. I heard someone who said who knows an alien, because I know an alien, and they watch them, they love the movies, and these are beamed across the galaxy. They even watch Premier League football as well, I said, oh, shut up. He goes, so across the galaxy, people are watching these things for all eternity. So I'm saying that lie. I'm not saying that I know that for a fact, but I'm saying if you can be part of something that's really beautiful, then it really it's an honor to be part of.
Yeah, it becomes bigger than the sum of its parts, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And when Gladiator won the Oscar that year, I think universally it was seen as a very deserved Oscar. I just was sad that Ridley Scott didn't win Best Director. It won Best Film and Best Actor and Best Cinematography and whatever it did win. But it was I'm very proud when you go and visit the Kodak Theatre and you see all the names of the movies that have won. They only print the name of the movie that's won, and it's there. It's really wonderful. And it was the same. The Kodak Theatre is where we saw the premiere of The Mummy. Actually, went to LA. It was in that same place where they host the Oscars, and it was an amazing. Here's a funny story. It was amazing. I went with my brother, and he kept saying, "Look who's on your right," and it was like three seats along was Kirk Douglas, and he goes, "Look on the left, that's Elizabeth Taylor." And I thought, wow, but they're nothing to me. So they went on and introduced the movie, and they said the cast are in the front 2 rows. There's Omid Djalili playing the warden. So you saw that, Elizabeth Taylor lifted up her sunglasses and she looked up and we went, "Hi," like that. So, oh my God, Elizabeth Taylor. And you look over at Kirk Douglas, goes, "How you doing, kid?" like that. And they goes, "We're going to take a short break, go to the toilet, and we'll come back with the movie." So I went to the toilet, and I'm at the same urinal as Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas with his dimple and his chin, and he's in Spartacus, and he's about 82. And he sat next to me stood next to me in the urinal. And then when he finished, he did that kind of shake. He did a kind of like urine shake. So I thought, he looked at me. So I shook back, and he went, "You too, huh?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "You're never too young to shake. I've been shaking since I was 40. I said, "Well, I'm 32 and I'm shaking." He goes, "Are you in the movie, kid?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Good luck. You're going to be great." And I thought, oh my God. And he sat down, and the lights went down. Before the lights went down, he looked over at me. Elizabeth Taylor just waved. And you've got all these stars. In the days, they bring in all these Hollywood stars. There were lots of people. I think Kevin Costner was there. They bring all the stars out. And then the movie starts, and I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. This is absolutely the truth. Anyone who's there will tell you. My death scene happens, bump into the wall, dead, and the whole crowd goes quiet. About 30 seconds afterwards, the projector packs up. You just see that like burned screen, thing comes up, and it stopped, and the lights came up, and someone said, "We have a technical problem. We'll be with you in a few minutes." And it went away. And my brother said, "Here's your chance." I said, "What are you talking about?" Because it's going to take them. I know these problems take about 3 to 4 minutes. You've got you can get up there and entertain the crowd. I said, "Shut up, what money?" Because go and say something. It's your chance. They've just seen you die. Introduce yourself as the guy who just died. So right next to where we sat is the steps going up at the Kodak Theatre. So I walk up and I just wave. I said, "Hey guys, hey everyone, yeah, that was me. I just died on the screen there." And there was a round of applause and some people whistling. I said, thank you. And I just said, I just want to say that if the film doesn't come back on, don't worry. After my death, it's all downhill. The film is a piece of crap. you're not missing anything. We can just go home like that. And there was no laughter. There's people looking around bewildered because is that true? You know? And a guy came on to take me off. He goes, come on, get off. I said, no, I'm in the movie. He said, come on, get off. And he's grabbing my arm. And I said, look, and I looked over and I said, Kirk Douglas, I'm in the movie, right? And he was talking to someone. The guy goes, Kirk is talking to you. And he looked up and he just went, who the fuck is that guy? And they took me away. There's a one moment, Kirk, you could have saved me. You have to shout, who the fuck is that guy? And they took me away and they put me in a holding room. This is my premiere. I'm in a holding room and they had to bring the director who goes, why were you saying that? I said, can you get me back? He goes, yeah, I said you were in the movie, but next time you do not talk. The film is not a piece of crap. The film actually kicks off when you die. Don't be talking about that. And you're not coming to the party either. I can't control you. And he got me back and I didn't go to the party. It was so funny. But yeah, that's the thing. I hope that answers your question.
I'm sort of sat here sort of dumbfounded by you ending up in a holding cell at the Mummy premiere.
A holding area. Can you believe it? It's crazy. When they had all these snacks, it was just a big room with lots of snacks.
Yeah.
They said, stay here. Sat there quietly eating like crisps.
Kirk let you down. You shook together. Like you're shaking brothers, you know.
That bloody early onset of Alzheimer's idiot. He was already senile. I didn't realize he was 82, already senile. He completely forgot who I was. In that short moment, in those 40 minutes, he forgot who I was.
Well, yeah, we've been firmly in the past for the last hour or so. So let's set our gaze to the future.
Yes.
And that is the show you've been working on until recently, Betrayal, a spy TV show coming out very soon. I know there's not been much of like trailers or anything like that, so we won't spoil anything. But what can you tell us about the show?
Well, I have to say, here's something. As far as spy shows go, this is really different. And I know that they made Daniel Craig was brought in to make the Bond franchise a bit more real, but he's still shooting people in the head and still things are happening and no one really bats an eyelid. Betrayal is about the ins and outs of the actual nuts and bolts of what it means to be a spy, the actual real life of a spy. And I have to say, Sean Evans does an amazing job. I mean, he's got piles. And so you see him putting on anusol. He has marital problems because his wife doesn't know what he's up to. And he says, I can't tell you what I do. They go to relationship advice and he can't talk about what he does. He gets the shit kicked out of him. Every other scene, his gadgets don't work. And by the way, can I say in the Bond movies, whenever they have the gadgets, have you noticed how a lot of those gadgets are usually used by Bond to get the woman? Like they say, Bond, here's a magnet you can use, and then he just uses the magnet to undo. So the woman's zip at the back of her dress. So his gadgets don't work, but he comes across by accident a terror plot. And this is where they've done their research because, and I was brought in because I'm Iranian, and I know very well that MI5 and MI6 are working together to stop, from what we heard, about 70 terrorist attacks that were thwarted last year. So they come across a big terror attack that's about to happen. And MI6 then gets involved with a half Iranian, with Zara Ahmadi plays this great half Iranian MI6 agent who then says, our man is flying in. And that's my character, a character called Asim Asadi, who is a kind of double agent. He's IRGC on narcotics, but he also seems to be close to the British royal family, and he has helped thwart terror attacks before. And that is the central theme. Is he going to help MI5 and MI6? And it doesn't look like he will, and you just don't know. And it's very different where in Bond movies, people get shot and you don't bat an eyelid. Here, people get killed and people are devastated, even the agents themselves. And it's about the emotional impact of these people who there is a toll taken on them. So I think it blows the lid on what's actually happening right now. If there are 70 terror attacks, a bunch of agents are involved. God knows who's died along the way. God knows what's been sacrificed by certainly on the British end, we don't know how many people have been sacrificed, and it is devastating. So it's a realism to a new level, and I can't be more proud to be part of this, because it will really open people's eyes, and it's funny as well. I mean, it's not meant to be funny, but there's David Eldridge he's got lovely touch for there's some humor in the show. They might have taken it out, I don't know, because it's quite serious. But I'm very proud of this. It's called Betrayal, 4-part series. They build up to my character. It's called the General. You don't actually see him until you hear his voice at the end of episode 1, and then you start seeing him. So I get a big episode of a build up as well, which is great. And I do. You won't recognize me. They've done me up quite a bit, so it's not like this look. It's because you don't want to say, oh, there's that comedian. So it's a serious role. And I hope that people will not recognize me, but I can tell you I'm in it, and hopefully people will discover me.
It's so exciting. I'm so intrigued at this idea as well, because the spy genre has obviously got stereotypes that are so driven by Bond and Bond's history of exploding buildings and seducing women, and that's all part of being a secret agent. And I think viewers are going to be excited to hear something that's altogether closer to reality.
Yeah, they're people like you and me. I think they're people who are very normal, who are trained, but it doesn't mean you're going to be perfect every time. Who do? I mean, I know Bond makes mistakes. Bond also. I watched Spectre on TV recently. I thought Spectre was a great movie as well. I mean, I remember when Sam Smith's theme tune came out, and everyone was split about it, but I loved it, and I loved the movie. But Bond gets a real kicking. But this is different. This is someone who could be you and me, and it's really and Sean Evans is a fabulous. He's a proper Scouser. I think I held up the filming once. I had a bit of a dicky tummy. I had to go to the toilet, and I came back, and I apologized. He goes, "No, it's all right, mate. It's better to have an empty house than a bad guest." And I said, "What?" Just these little Scousisms just come out, which I thought was very funny. And we had a wonderful time doing it, and it was. I just really hope, and it's from the producers of The Crown. Julian Gerald was a fabulous director. If you really want to learn directing, come on a set where this guy's on, just to watch his calmness, to watch his little notes he gives that makes all the difference, because that was very good, but try it like this. And I think that's the key. The key to a great director who would, direct fantastic blockbusters like The Crown, seen as one of the most high quality television shows ever made. It's because of people like Julian Gerald. It's because of great writers like Peter Morgan, David Eldridge, and it's really it was just such a pleasure to be part of, and very eye-opening to see the process of how they work. They demand a crew that works like clockwork, and they were all northern as well. We were all shot up in Liverpool, and it was wonderful that there was just no nonsense. There was no nonsense, no dramas. I've never been part of it. There's always some drama, nothing. Everyone just got on with it. We're wrapped for the day. Round of applause. See you tomorrow. It was like that for a whole 4 weeks. It was brilliant.
I wish we had more information to give the listeners about release dates and stuff, but that's just not been announced yet. But I'll let everyone know when it's coming out, and I'll be sure to. I think we're hoping to get David on as well to talk about writing it. So that should be fun.
He's a great guy. What a great guy.
Speaking of things that's happening now, you're currently touring your Namaste tour. Thank
you. We are an hour and 10 minutes in. How long have we been going? We've been talking quite a bit.
An hour and 10. But so yeah, we're good.
As long as when you do the cut, you can keep this in. Yes, I am touring. Thank you for mentioning, Scott. It's the Namaste tour was supposed to finish in December, but it's now been extended to next year. And I've been given lots of international dates. I took this show, which is really to talk about all the current discourses going on in the world, taking in Ukraine, taking in Gaza, taking in Iran. And it's just something that's rolled on, and there seems to be a demand for it internationally now. So we'll be keeping the tour going. If you go on my website, omidjalili.net, there are a few tickets left. Please come along and see the show and see it. It's a good night out. It's one of those things where when I was in Seattle, they didn't know me from Adam, and they were actually quite standoffish when I got to the theater. They didn't really want to do a sound check, and they were all like, "Who the hell is this guy?" Wow, we never heard of him. And I wasn't sold out either. It was like, he hasn't even sold out this place. He's a nobody. But when the show was over, all the all the people working at the theater, the sound guys, the lighting guy, the security guys, they all wanted selfies. And I said, you were quite cold with me. They goes, we don't know who you were. We loved the show. And I said, what did you make of the show? They just said, you know what? We laughed and we learned. And I thought, wow, that's all you want as a stand-up comic. So it's a good night out. And please come along and see I have the best support act. Everyone's so jealous because I have the best support act as well. Because if you don't like me, you'll love him. His name is Boothby Graffo. He's a real comedian's comedian. And he's just so hysterical that when people they give him a cheer, which is so big. And the idea is that, you've got Mo Farah, then hands it over to Usain Bolt. That's what it is. So you just think, oh, no one's going to beat this. But I purposely set the bar high. And also because I want to get better. I don't want to just, you keep on. So I thought, oh my God, he's done really well. I have to be really on my game. And but come and see him because he's absolutely fantastic, and he's my best friend in comedy, Boothby Graffo. So don't miss him. So whenever the start date is or the start time, don't miss him as well.
We'll put links in the show notes below so everyone can go and click on the website and buy their tickets. And you're touring all over the UK as well. Lots of dates, not just in London.
Yes,
but I will say, you've got a couple near me. You've got High Wycombe, that's not far from me, and then you're at the lovely Union Chapel in November, which is one of my favourite venues. It's
a fantastic venue. I've performed there many times, and there are some venues that are just a very good comedy venue, and that's a great comedy venue.
I'll have to pop down to one of them and see if we can make this meeting non-digital.
Please do. Yeah, I'll get you tickets. Just say when. I'll get you in.
Well, we'll sort that out. But I think the last question now. This is the hot seat.
Last question.
This question has been asked to everyone we've ever had on the show, so there's no pressure. But you are going to be judged against hundreds of other people. Omid Djalili, we need to know what your favorite spy movie of all time is.
Wow. Okay. My favorite spy movie, but as I was about to say it, I just thought, well, hang on, is it a spy movie? There's a film called Marathon Man. Is that a spy movie? Can we class that as a spy movie?
It's on the periphery, but I'm willing to hear an argument for it.
Well, I think it's because when Laurence Olivier says, is it safe? He is a Nazi spy. I believe he's a Nazi and he's a spy and he's living in the West and no one really knows it. That movie where Dustin Hoffman is just falls into this terrible thing where they think he's got some kind of diamond. I remember watching that as a kid. And I wasn't a kid, I was a teenager, but I love Dustin Hoffman because of the film The Graduate, and that film really affected me when I was a teenager. So I watched everything that was in it with him, and he was just fantastic in it. And it was one of those movies that really, really gripped me, and I don't know why. I mean, obviously there were some spy movies I love. I do love Spy Game, the movie I was in. It was a film I really recommend. I did love the Bourne movies. I suppose the only other spy movie, if you can call it a spy movie, would be Argo with Ben Affleck, where he pretends to be, because that was a big thing with the Iranian embassy siege, where they go in and they pretend to be a film crew. That's people, pretending to be something else. I suppose you could call it a spy movie. I thought Argo was fantastic, but certainly of all the big spy movies, I have to say, and I know I'll disappoint people, but I thought Spectre was spectacular. I thought Spectre, I would say that was a movie which gripped me from beginning to end. And the stunts, because I know they're all done for real. I'm going like when the plane is chasing Bond. When Bond is in a car and a plane's chasing him down a snow hill, you think, oh, are you effing kidding me? And every time I was like stood up shouting, are you kidding me with this shit? I would say Spectre would be the most enjoyable spy movie. And I liked the storyline. I thought the storyline had some depth to it. And I thought Daniel Craig was absolutely fantastic. And I know for a fact that it was one of the movies that he enjoyed doing the most. I think he was quite invested in it somehow. I don't know. I just heard that on the... So there you go. In that order, I would say Spy Game, Marathon Man, Argo, and Spectre. They're my top 4. But I would say, as far as enjoyment is concerned, Spectre's my favorite Bond movie. I hope I haven't disappointed anyone.
Not at all.
You're looking very,
goodness.
Scott, you're thinking, you haven't seen many. If you're going to say Spectre, you don't know much about this genre. I can see that in your face.
It's actually, no, do you know what it is? I'm actually genuinely impressed because as I say, I've done a lot of interviews on this show, and a lot of the times the answers are, oh, I really love The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I really love North by Northwest or Casino Royale. They are all-time classics. We won't argue that.
There's no point even mentioning them.
No, you're bringing out Marathon Man, which I had to go and check my film list to be like, yes, it does count. So that's ticked.
Does it? Okay, good.
Yep. So you're on there. Argo, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Spectre is a film that is controversial, to say the least, to the Bond fandom that I know are tuning into this to hear about The World Is Not Enough. So to hear that get some love is blowing some minds. And then, of course, Spy Game is, I always call Spy Game the spy movie fans' spy movie.
Yes, definitely. If there are comedians and there are comedians. And I would say for spy fans, Spy Game is up there, definitely. Such a so well shot. Those shots when they go around in a circle and you see the two of them talking. I mean, that kind of stuff. What you probably don't know is there was a lot of incoherence going on. There's scenes with me and Brad Pitt, and I can't even hear what he's saying. I have no clue, and I don't even know what he's talking about, and I have to react to him. And I'm trying to be. I had to stop chewing as well. I was chewing a few times because I thought I'm with real. I've got to do that thing. I'm a real movie star now. But yeah, I would say Spy Game it's got to be up there for sure. But for me, I know it's controversial. It's only because I saw how much hate there was for Sam Smith when it first came out, and I absolutely love that. I get emotional when I hear that theme tune, and when he hits that final note, it's really beautiful. And for people to have a go at it is really strange to me, and it actually sets the tone for what is quite an emotional movie. I got kind of like, wow, this is really violent, and this is really like serious. And this is like, if this is actually going on, I'm scared for the world, and now we see in the world, there were like those Bond villains from before. And I think Christoph Waltz is fantastic in it. And he's the original Blofeld. And you see how he gets the Blofeld scar. Things like that make me go, that's how he got it. And it's like a kind of prequel. So in a sense, you're playing around with time. But I just like those little details. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
I think if people are going to write in to complain about your list, I'll send them elsewhere, because I think it's a solid list of films you picked.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you know what? Go fuck yourselves.
And cut.
Let's finish on that.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect note to finish on. Omid, you've got Betrayal coming to TV soon. When that's got more details, I'll put that online, but I'm looking forward to it, and I'm sure listeners and viewers are too. And of course, your Namaste tour is on now, and there's tickets available to go find you.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to reminisce and wonderful to talk. And actually, as we're speaking, I have to say I have a tremendous sense of gratitude that anyone wants to talk to me about these movies, because as I'm talking about them, I have a tremendous sense of gratitude that I've even been in these movies. So I don't take it for granted. I'm one of the luckiest people around. I'm just a bald, fat bloke from London of Iranian parentage, and I have no right to be in these movies. I have absolutely no right at all. And I'll finish with this story, because I was so confident as a comedian, and my first scenes were on The Mummy with Brendan Fraser's hanging scene. So I'm sat next to Rachel Weisz, and I'm telling people what to do, because they're all Arabs, and the Arabs like me, and I could speak a bit of Arabic. And she just said to me, "Who are you? Where have you come from?" Because I said, "I'll tell you who I am, love. I'm a stand-up comedian on the London circuit. I got 40 quid at the Oranji Boom Boom a week before I came out here, so I know what I'm doing." She goes, "The Oranji what?" I said, "The Oranji Boom Boom. It's a small comedy club, and you're only there by invite only. And there was only 40 people in the crowd. And you get £1 for every person that comes in. I got 40 quid. Some people get 10 quid because only 10 people show up. So I know what I'm doing. I'm a top comic." And she just went, "Holy shit, this guy's so full of himself." But it was a real moment. So I'm just very, very grateful. And I think just to Rachel Weisz, I apologize for being so kind of giving it large on the set, but it stood me in good stead.
Hey, you made it memorable, and you've made this memorable. Omid, thank you for the time. Thank you for sharing your stories, and
Thank you, guys.
I know everyone's had a good
Yes,
time.
thank you.
Thank you, and I hope I get to see more of your voice. Your voice is incredible, Kathryn. Fantastic
Oh gosh, you're
voice.
too kind. Well, get me on one of your next productions or something. Get a little cheeky voiceover into Betrayal season 2.
100% amazing. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Real pleasure. Take care.
Thank you, Omid.